My name is Lauren Hollis, and I am back here for part 2 of our interview with Tania Gomez. If you haven't checked out part 1, strongly recommend that you do check that out. We will put a link for that below, and you can always go to our interview page on YouTube. Tania did speak initially about Tania's origin story and a little bit about the work that you do within the disability sector. But you also have Strawberry Solutions, which you started a couple of years ago. You're currently an owner of. You've got quite a good team there. And look, I know that it's been great to see you guys starting to put out, some like short interviews and a lot more video content and things like that. So can you tell me a little bit about kind of what is Strawberry Solutions focus? I know it's like around e-learning design. How did that come about? And is there specialized packages? Do you focus on bespoke? Do you focus on kind of, more, specified training products and things like that?
Sure. Yeah. So Strawberry Solutions is an e-learning agency. We really focus on bespoke work, and so we work with a lot of RTOs. We started with RTOs specifically, and we really started around helping RTOs to digitize and move on online for the first time. We work heavily in Canvas and with Accelerate, and we've probably done 20 or 30 Accelerate to Canvas integrations where we have our tech team connect those together and make everything work, but then also look at how do we get you online and what does that look like. And that's different for every provider based on where they are in their digital journey. It could be there still are providers who are still posting things out and that are doing things classroom only as opposed to having things online. We did see a big shift around COVID, and COVID was a crazy time for us. I think our business doubled during COVID with helping schools and universities and RTOs move online as quickly as possible. And that can be a really simple solution. It can be, just a repository, for want of a better word, a really simple LMS that has, PDF downloads and an upload feature, to all the way through to interactive files. The majority of our work is more in the corporate space and university space, but we actually, our biggest client is TAFE. We do all of the micro-credentials and learning for TAFE New South Wales and TAFE Gippsland and a few of the TAFE WA campuses, and so they are our biggest client at the moment, but we do a lot of corporate work as well, such as Fire and Rescue New South Wales. We do a lot of government work. We developed the learning for the Commonwealth Games and the anti-doping for all of the officials in that. And so really people give us their training manuals, whatever that looks like. It could be a PowerPoint, it could be a policy manual, it could be staff training, it could be a unit of competence. And then we do the learning design of that. So learning design or instructional design isn't commonly, people don't know that it's a thing, but it's actually looking at that learning and figuring out what's the best way to break this down, what's going to be the way that we can convey this. So if we take a policy manual as an example, we say, okay, no one's going to read that. How do we take that information and sequence it and break it down and decide how to do that? So we do the learning design. Our learning designers then break that all into storyboards, and then those storyboards go to our graphic design team who make it look beautiful, interactive, engaging, and use things like interactive elements to break up learning. Mostly we do that in something like Articulate Rise, create that as an interactive module, and then we give it back to go into any LMS. So we're LMS agnostic. We work in every system, and that's so that we're working on behalf of the education provider, the RTO as an example, as opposed to working for a system and trying to get you to use a specific system. We work in every system and just try to make sure that we're getting the outcome. We really do focus on the business outcome, so it's not just digitize my, Cert 3 in early childhood. It's actually who is your cohort, how are they learning, what worked really well in the classroom that you want to replicate online, or if you're doing a mixed mode, what chunks do we want to do in the classroom, how do we take your lesson plan and break that up so that it's not just everything you do in the classroom's also online, but we actually think through, okay, are you going to be standing in front of the class to do the first section? What's the first activity you want them to do? Do you want them then to upload that online and self-mark? We did, when Cricos changed to their 20% online, we did a lot of Cricos, we still do a lot of Cricos College online so that they can optimize that. And then, yeah, how do we actually solve the business problem as opposed to just digitizing your content and giving it back to you? Are we actually saving you time, money, effort, reducing your admin burden, getting better outcomes around retention or engagement with your students?
And I think that's the real key to it. I was speaking to a business last week about something very similar to this, and they were kind of like, we just want to put everything online. I'm like, yes, but you've done that. You've put everything online, but it doesn't make sense, and it's very complicated. And now your completion rate's dropped. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with classroom training, as long as it's still, financially viable. And often blended models of especially in that Cert 3 sort of a range, I find that most Cert 3 learners are not really capable of doing fully independent learning online. They really do need to have some classroom-based interaction of what's the best way to bring them in, and what do we bring them in for? And, yes, what can we still optimize and take out into an online forum that's still going to work really well for them and allow for that flexibility. But you're right, it's that instructional design part where people just go, just take it to this, or just take it to this, or a state funding contract goes, well, everything's got to be done, 50% of it's got to be done face to face. And it's like, can we just actually look at the group of learners for just a moment and figure out what's best for them? But you obviously find that that's definitely a process that you need to take a lot of clients through from that education perspective.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand, and when they see our quotes, they always question, well, can I do that myself? And it's like, well, if you could, you might have already have done that, but we can't just take your PowerPoints and copy and paste your PowerPoints into an LMS. When you're delivering a PowerPoint, you're explaining each point, you're using examples, you're giving case studies, you're adding to that, and your strength as a trainer is coming in there, so that when we take your PowerPoint, we have to add all of the stuff that you've now missed in not having that trainer explain that slide. And so we need to then break that into stories. We used to use case studies. Whatever works in the classroom does work online, but you need to actually translate it so it has the same techniques. Learners don't want to sit down for more than 7-minute blocks. So how do we do that? In a classroom, you can see your students fidgeting, and you go, okay, everybody stand up and let's have a break. Let's go outside for a drink. You still need to be thinking about what the barriers in the classroom is, because that's the barriers to learning. You've just observed them in the classroom. Now, how do you then, those things don't become not problems because you're learning online. You still have an attention span issue. You still need to engage. You still need somewhere to ask questions. You need, all the same problems are there, but some people believe that it's just as simple as putting the documents in an online repository is going online, as opposed to actually thinking through the pedagogy of, are they going to learn from this online?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it'll certainly be interesting to see once the new standards come in. And I mean, realistically, I think that auditors are already starting to ask questions, understanding that we're building towards this point of, what are the materials that you're going to be using for the course? And, how have you designed the course so that it is going to be engaging and motivating, and it is nice. I think for a lot of people, it is kind of nice to know that, if your response to that as an RTO is, well, we've taken a whole bunch of PowerPoints and we've put them into a PDF, and now that the student can download them online, that's our training methodology, that, the auditor actually now has a way to turn around and go, really? Well, is that going to be engaging, and is that going to be motivating for the learners? Or are we going to see just a plummet in your completion rates based on that? I think that it's it will be interesting to see how that space operates.
And I think the outcome of teaching someone isn't just that it's engaging, but it's actually that they learn from it and can do the thing, right? Can actually implement that learning and learns a new skill. And so I don't think anyone can just read something and actually learn a new skill. You have to then apply the knowledge, you have to practice it to get that level of mastery to be competent or not yet competent, right? It's not, you can't read one thing once and have knowledge, or you could probably have knowledge, but you couldn't have skill, right? It's a process of learning, and it just goes back to adult learning principles, right? It just goes back to all of those adult learning principles about how to actually adults learn. And what we're trying to do is teach them a new skill that they can apply in a workplace. So we actually have to make sure that the learning is fit for purpose to actually get you that outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think that's why bespoke makes the most sense, because when you do create things bespoke for a particular audience, for a particular delivery model, it's just so much easier to write and design materials that allow for those aha moments and, oh, okay, that's what it means to me. When I speak to the vast majority of providers, you kind of go, oh no, we've got these off the shelf, and I'm like, your learners are not going to understand that. The whole point of buying off the shelf is that you are then required to contextualize. If you're telling me you're going to buy off the shelf and you're going to just use off the shelf and you're not going to go through any contextualization process, your learners aren't going to get it. You can't expect your learners to get it because it doesn't make sense to them.
And there's also just so many types of learners in any classroom. So you still have to be building out, we call them learning pathways. If you're in a classroom, you're going to have, especially in a CRICOS classroom, you have people from all over the world with all different levels of understanding. But in even a domestic RTO, you have someone who might be a mature student who might have done this work before. You could have someone who's a school leaver. You could have someone who's in the middle. You could have someone who's grown up in another country and has no contextual information. So you can't really it isn't one size fits all. You need to really look at how do we learn best and how do we teach best. It's really around having options around your learning, so that if you have done this and you've worked in the sector for 10 years and you've joined this classroom, that you can skip through the things that you already can demonstrate learning and understanding of. But that's so unique to every single individual. And so, I'm really in favour of how do we build out adapting learning pathways? How do we really recognise the needs of our students? Because again, in the classroom, we do this all the time. When you're teaching a group of students, you go, okay, that person is, brand new to Australia. When we talk about, so I'm an early childhood teacher, so all my examples are children, but, if they've never been to a childcare centre, I have to bring forward that childcare visit I was going to do in week 6 to the first week, because 3 people in my class have no context of what I'm talking about. And you do that automatically as a good trainer in your session planning and knowing your class and making that personalisation of your sessions. So you need to be able to think about how do you do that online. And it doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to do it all online, as we spoke about. It's just that acknowledgement that everyone's learning is an individual journey, and it can't really just be off the shelf is all that it is, unless you are going to still have a teacher there who is contextualizing it and filling in those gaps, or there's other mechanisms to make sure that everyone is actually understanding it.
I mean, and that's a huge challenge for RTOs. I think that, finding trainers who, there's trainers who are absolutely fantastic at delivery, like they love being there in front of students, engaging with students. And some trainers are really great with big groups, and some trainers are really great, with small groups or with one-on-one. But to try and find a trainer that's fantastic at delivery, also has a good solid understanding of compliance and learning and design, that's 3 entirely separate brainwaves and things like that. So it is incredibly difficult to find people who really do excel and enjoy most of those areas. If you do find those trainers, they're not going to be cheap. So there's the whole business aspect of it as well. So
that's right.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really hard. I think being being a trainer is such a variety of skills that you have to bring. Plus, you also need the industry. You not only need it in the classroom, you need the industry background and experience. And so you can have people, I have at least worked with trainers who haven't been in an industry for way too long, and they might be great in the classroom or they might be good at the paperwork, but they have no relevant recent examples of how things are actually run. And so it's a really challenging thing to try and negotiate through. And I think that's why a lot of people do move online, because they feel like then they can have a lower quality of trainer. But sometimes that's not the case if you haven't invested in learning that does that personalization piece.
Absolutely. And we are going to come back one more time with Tania to talk all about the future of the industry that we love so much. Guys, if you do want to follow Tania, please do. We will include the link to follow her on LinkedIn. We will also include the links for both Strawberry Solutions and Tania Gomez Consulting if you have any questions in the VET or NDIS space. Thank you so much for joining us so far, guys. We will be back for you next week, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. My name is Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services.